This is the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast. Here's your host, Corey Tusick.
This is the Bitcoin Made Simple podcast. I'm your host, Corey Tusick. On today's episode, I interviewed Dylan LeClair. You might have seen Dylan whenever on Twitter. He's kind of exploded with his followers, and he does a lot of on-chain analytics, and he's wrote some great pieces for Bitcoin Magazine, and he has his website 21st Paradigm. So yeah, he's been really coming on in the Bitcoin scene ever since he last year dropped out of college and went full time into Bitcoin and realized the Ponzi scheme that he was in was not worth it in the college world. So yeah, it was a great conversation with Dylan. We got into like what really is education, especially whenever you can get it for free on the internet, and knowledge really is just what you can retain, absorb, and learn from the world. So it doesn't have to come from some as he called a boomer professor that just is sitting there on a Zoom call now, because whenever they all had to do class from home. So yeah, we had a good conversation. I also found out that he played club D1 hockey like I did at UVM, so that was pretty cool. And then at the end, we get into a little bit of market analytics. If you listen to that episode, I did release just a short blurb, like 20 minutes of his market outlook. But that is still at the end of this episode. So if you want to hear it again, the conversation rolls right into it at the end. But everything else, Dylan's gonna come on and be a regular here for a couple months. We're gonna try to do monthly calls and get market outlooks and stuff like that, and then just chat about what's going on in the Bitcoin world. So follow Dylan on Twitter at BTZization. That's Bitcoinization. And 21stparadigm.com, and then on Bitcoin Magazine you can see his articles, his great articles there. So without further ado, also we have our sponsor, Coinbeast Connect. Do you have questions about Bitcoin? Personalize your learning and book a one-on-one video call with a Bitcoin pro on Coinbeast Connect. Learn about mining, security, the Lightning Network, DeFi, taxes, and many other topics. It's really easy. Choose your topic and pro, select a date when you're available, and bring your questions to the meeting room. Book your first call today by going to coinbeast.com and clicking on the Connect tab. Be prepared for the financial revolution and get the knowledge you need. Thanks again to Coinbeast for sponsoring the show. I really appreciate them coming on board. And if you want to follow the show, it's the Twitter handles at Bitcoin Simply. If you want to follow me, my personal one is at Tusick Corey. I don't use that one as much. It's more of a PR thing, but you can follow me there. And then if you want to get in contact with the show, it's Bitcoin Made Simple Podcast at gmail.com. Thanks. So, I'm not considered young, but you'll find this out. I mean, you're what, 20 years old, right?
Yeah.
So you'll find out that it's pretty soon in the next handful of years, you'll reach the age that you stop aging at in your mind. And so like in my mind, I'm in my 30s, but I was sitting there thinking about like, oh man, this kid's so much younger than me. And I realized you're closer in age to my children than you are to me, which is nuts because my kids aren't old and I'm not old. I was just like, that's a little crazy, but yeah. So how's it feel being the Whiz Kid on one of the Whiz Kids on Bitcoin?
I mean, yeah, man, it's been kind of a crazy couple of years, to be honest. Especially the last 6 months for like myself personally, but also Bitcoin. Started working with Bitcoin Magazine, and that's been a whirlwind. Been a lot of fun, but yeah, I mean, the cool thing is like I could be what I'm doing now, and sharing my thoughts publicly, or I could be just a total anon, not share a detail about me or whatever. And it's like the merit of your idea is what matters, like, yep. I'm 20 years old, no credentials. This is like my Bitcoin Magazine was my first real job. Like I worked like, manual labor construction stuff, but like, and what does that have to do with this? Nothing. And people still, will take the face value of what I say, instead of looking at what university I attended or what MBA I have, which is kind of what the legacy system is.
Yeah, yeah, no, and that's what's cool about Bitcoin is that it doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what age you are, um, like where you live in the world. Like I don't know if you know the Satoshi in Venezuela. If you ever followed that account?
I have not.
I'm not gonna mess up his name because I don't have it in front of me. But anyways, I had him on a couple months ago. Dude's like, sharp as a tack, gets Bitcoin through and through, and he's like having meetups in like Venezuela, and like,
So awesome.
yeah, it's just like, oh my god, I love that part of this.
How many episodes have you done?
This is 29.
Congrats, man. That's awesome. When do you
I
start?
think I started in February. And basically my goal was I was like, I need to learn more about Bitcoin. And I still say I'm at 1% of my understanding of Bitcoin, and I'll probably be there for like 10 more years. And I think all of us will be, because it's just like there's so much more than we can even understand. But yeah, I committed to myself. I was like, I need to learn more about it, and the best way to do that is to interview the best minds, and the people that understand it the most. And might as well record it, put it up on the internet for other people to learn. If I'm learning in public, might as well let other people learn too. And then actually, the episode I just released today, which is with CJ Wilson, it was the first one that has a sponsor. So like, just told myself, I was like, I'm going to do it for 52 weeks. I own my own businesses, so I could afford to, carve out time to, a couple hours a week to do this, and didn't really want to do it for any sponsorship or anything. And that was that, and by the way, can you hear my one son crying in the background? I don't know if that's distracting or anything.
No.
Okay. Yeah. It's lunchtime. So, the food isn't on his plate fast enough. But anyways, but yeah, so, yeah, it's a Coin Beast. I don't know if you've explored Coin Beast at all.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
Congrats
Yeah. So thanks. Yeah. So they reached out and they were like, hey, let's do something. Let's form a partnership. And so, yeah, we're doing that. And I recommend to everybody, not just because they're a sponsor, it's like a great resource, for basically what we're doing now. We're all learning, we're all trying to figure out Bitcoin and how it works in our world. So you what college were, if you don't want to dox yourself, that's fine. But what college were you at?
That's fine. I was at the University of Vermont.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like born and raised here. Pretty small state. Didn't go too far from home. Not because I was scared to. More of I just like it here, and also it was pretty good deal. I got good grades in school and whatever, and in state it was just affordable. Even before I was like super orange pilled about Bitcoin, but also just about like the merits of education and whatnot. Like I knew I wasn't gonna go spend $50,000 a year to get some title and credentials and education, yes, but I knew that I wasn't gonna sell myself for school even before I connected a lot more dots.
Yeah, it's funny because I think when I messaged you, I was like, we gotta talk about college. And my wife, she always asks, like, oh, who are you interviewing? And I kind of give her little details about and she made me like do like the don't talk too much down about college in front of our kids. She's always very wary of that, because I can get on I can really tee off on education and start unloading. And like, if you can see my shirt Pitt, that's where like I literally went to college to play hockey. That was it. Like,
love it, man. Awesome.
Are you a hockey player?
Yeah, I was that was kind of my sport. I played club at UVM. I mean, could have pursued
that's
maybe some D3 thing or whatever, but it's whatever.
Yeah, that's what Pitt was club, D1 club, so I'm sure it was like same level as Vermont. It's funny. I never try to brag about that. I'm just like, oh, I played or whatever, and it was for fun, but it's a decent level of competition. And I got validation from that whenever I had he played 20 games in the NHL. His name's Carl Stollery, and I interviewed him like 2 months ago. And and he was like, "Oh yeah, there's some good players in there," and I was like, "Dude, that's awesome! Like, thanks for that." Because usually I'm just like, "Yeah, it's a club, you know." I mean, we weren't like super serious, but yeah, did you get to play a lot? I guess you were just a freshman, right?
Yeah. I mean, I played a lot. It was fun. It was like, I tell people it was like NCAA mixed with beer league kind of, where like
Yep.
we took it serious, but like we'd go on buses and whatnot and like, stay at hotels and all that. But at the same time, like we'd also head out on the Saturday night when we had a game Sunday. So it was a good
Oh yeah.
time.
Oh yeah.
Definitely missed that the most, or one of the most, like from college, was the club hockey, just like kind of, I don't know, camaraderie and just exercising, like in the team sport kind of way. Definitely missed that. So, but it is what it is.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So that, I mean, so I went to, I think I would have maybe without hockey given it a try for a little bit, but I was too much of an entrepreneur, and like, it's just like sitting in classrooms, like listening to people tell me about what they know about the industries and blah, blah, blah. And it's like I remember because I'm a filmmaker and own like streaming platforms, all that kind of stuff. And like, I remember sitting in film class and listening to these film like professors and like telling me how to make movies. And I just wanted to be like, excuse me, what movie have you made that I would want to see? Like, I'm just curious. Like, and like, oh, the answer is none. Okay, that's fine. And like that goes across every sector of education, mostly in upper education. Is that what you found with like business, where you have these people telling you
Totally.
what to do, but they never did it in real life?
Yeah, totally. There's obviously exceptions to the rule, but like our head of economics or whatnot, like, you like, what have you done? Oh, you're a lifelong professor. Got
Yeah,
it. Like, yep, totally makes sense. Checks.
that's a that like makes me think of like I had this thought in my head in college where I was like, those that can do, or those that can't do teach, and those that can't teach become professors.
Yeah, it's pretty spot on. There were some professors I liked and I really connected with.
Yeah, and that's a
There's just a,
generalization. There are good
yeah,
professors. I hate, and I know some. So, but
yeah, and like most of them are just like, I guess products of the bureaucracy, and they just climbed some ladder of just like, in the system, and it's like, what do you know besides what the textbook's telling you to know? Like, not
yeah,
much.
exactly, and uh, I'll never forget the arrogance too. Is what kills me. My freshman year, I did go to this small school called St. Vincent College because they had a D3 team that had a chance to go all the way. And my brother had played for them the year before. So I kind of knew what I was getting into. And this professor there, I signed up for electives and film, media, that's like my life. And I signed up for economics, just being like, whatever, I'll just take a macroeconomics course. This is easy. I always got good grades without trying. So how hard is math? That's what I figured. I was like, oh, like what's economics? And little did I know it was much more uh in depth than I thought. It wasn't just as simple as like adding and subtracting numbers. But this professor, I won't drop his name just because I don't want to be mean to him, but I'll never forget this. First day of class, he goes, uh, today I want to give you an example. This is like my first day of college. He's like, I'm gonna give you an example of what the lectures will be like for this entire semester. He's going on and on. And he's like, so you don't have to take notes, but I'm going to give you a lecture I gave to the United Nations in Qigong, talking about world economic, blah, 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 blah. And I was just like, I remember being so turned off by that dude. I was like, all right, I'm not paying attention. So I literally zoned out and didn't buy the book and or anything. And I literally was like, I'll just take the tests and wing it and see what happens. And if my dad's probably listening to this and probably shaking his head like, oh my God, this is what he was doing. Um, and so I showed up for the first test and an macroeconomics test with no multiple choice. That's what I was looking at. And I was like, oh my God, I can't even fake this. Like it would be like taking something in a different language and having to write the words out. Like I had to write like sentences explaining what I was seeing in like the, graphs and stuff.
Yeah.
And I bombed that test to the point that, I literally got zero. Like I just like was writing on it, like, did not pay attention. Sorry. Like, and,
Yeah, macro. I mean, I love macroeconomics, like actual, like, actual econ. But like, I took a macroeconomics course, and it was pretty brutal. I mean, we're looking at charts and stuff from like, I don't know, man, like the 1940s, like literally like by Keynes himself. It's like
yeah.
one of them I remember like really was the Phillips curve, and it's like inflation on the y-axis and employment on the x-axis, and it was saying the higher inflation is, and there's this curve to it, and it says the higher inflation is, the lower employment is, and the lower inflation is, the higher unemployment is. So it's saying like as there was less, if there's less inflation, there's gonna be less people employed, and it was like this model that these brilliant economists thought of, and we were taught that this is how it works, and I was like, that this is not how it works, and here's why. And they're like, no, that's not how it is. And I was like, no,
They're like, nah, like plugging their
yeah.
ears.
And that's when I was like, and this was like right before COVID. My freshman year, we got like sent home, which for me was like 15 minutes away, but still. And that was the point for me. I was like, what am I doing? Like I'm learning this stuff that like, and at the same time, I'm on Twitter. Like I spend a lot of time on Twitter now, but like I did back then. And I was getting my education that I was, paying for. And it wasn't an outrageous amount, but it wasn't, not meaningful. It was like solid. Could have stacked with that. and like, I'm at the same time, I'm listening to like, Preston Pish and his podcast and all this stuff with like actual experts who like actually look at data and like actually understand what's happening. And I'm like, wait, like, what am I learning? Like, what am I doing here? Like, yeah, I can connect with alumni if I graduate or whatever it is, but like, what? I'm gonna do 3 more years of this? Like, there's just no chance.
Yeah. It's you got out of a huge debt. You got yourself out from a huge debt bubble that was going to explode over you when you graduate. And because think about it now, you're working with Bitcoin Magazine, you're stacking sats, you're learning all that kind of stuff, basically becoming an entrepreneur probably. You have your website. What's the actual domain name so that I get that right? It's
21st Paradigm.
Okay, yeah, 21stparadigm.com. And think 3 years from now where you're going to be, as opposed to when you'd graduate and they'll be like, okay, go out there, get a job. Like, I'll never forget, like, I graduated with my degree and like they were pushing these jobs on me to like go be a salesman for like a machine parts company. Fastenal, that was the company. Fastenal, if you've ever seen that, Fastenal. And like they were like, it's a good job, benefits, blah blah blah. And I was like, this has nothing to do, like, it's sales. And what does that have to do? And it's just, yeah, they're like, they just want you to have, they want to have their placement rate so high. Yeah, anyways. So macro, I struggle with that. But I will say, even though I bombed that test, I got a 0. And that arrogant professor wrote on the test when he handed it back and said, and it said, see me after class. And I was like, oh my God, I'm in college and I'm getting see me after class. Like, that's something that happens in like junior high or like, and he just, was like, in the most arrogant way, telling me, he's like, if you, I'll let you drop the class and won't let this, get stuck on your record. Cause I think it was past the point that I could drop it like safely or whatever, their stupid rules are. He's like, I'll waive it for you, just because, obviously this isn't going to work. And, and the last thing you should do to me is tell me that I can't do something. And I was like, well, why would you do that? And he's like, there's no way you'll get a passing grade. And I was like, all right, well, I'm going to do that now. And literally like got with this dude he was a grad student, it was like a genius in economics, and I've tried to find him on the internet. Mike Schreck, if you ever hear this, look me up, dude. Um, and he and I got together like twice a week in the evening, and I was like, dude, I'm gonna crush this course. I need to basically get 100% the rest of the way, and you're gonna teach it to me. And so that was my first introduction to like, okay, this kind of makes sense. I stored it in the back of my mind, and now I find myself after college like watching like economics professors videos on like YouTube, and getting my education there. So you kind of spoke about that a little bit, like getting your education from podcasts and everything like that. um and Jeff Booth, I'm sure you're familiar with, has said like, the price of education has come down. What do you see the future being with education? Do you see more people leaning towards just going on their merits, and companies starting to hire people based on what they know, as opposed to this legacy system?
Yeah, man, I've thought about it a lot, and I love Jeff's his book, The Price of Tomorrow. His just like, in general, he honestly shaped a lot of kind of my thinking around this. Technically, like what was it, in May I deferred of 2020, so like, I was committed to take the year off, but I didn't know, but I was really not feeling it. And I think that summer, I don't know if it was the spring or summer, I read Jeff's book and a bunch of other things. And I was like, this totally makes sense. Like, okay, so the cost of education is actually way, way lower than it's ever been in history. And I know that because I am reading this $13 book that someone on a free podcast recommended to me, and I'm learning a lot. Check. Okay. So what do I do? Well, I'm going to go, create value for myself, and I like to acquire Bitcoin. But what does the future look like? And like, 10 years from now, are people still in this trap? And I think there's a couple things at play here, which, kind of is like a pretty deep rabbit hole with like fiat, right? Like one, we're kind of like bridging this gap gradually, then suddenly, from like industrial age institutions to like this, information digital age we're entering. We're kind of already halfway in. We're like halfway out the door almost. And so we have all these legacy institutions that supposedly kind of, are important, or like, mean something. If you have a MBA from Harvard, right? Like there's still some kind of status symbol there. But 10 years from now, like, are people still going to be paying the equivalent of 6 figures to get an education? And I don't think so. And I think there's a couple things there. One is, I think Bitcoin and like the monetization of Bitcoin kind of explodes or implodes this everything debt bubble, right? Like the only reason, and there's a lot to this, and there's a lot of nuance, but like, why does the university bureaucracy like continue to survive? Well, because you can go get a $100,000 loan from a university, or from a bank to pay a university. The university is guaranteed to get that money because it's backstopped by the federal government, right? Like, or like it's backstopped by a bank, which is backstopped by a federal agency, and it's all this stuff. Like, there's I can't go to the bank now. I've tried to go to the bank and get a 5% interest loan unsecured. They say hell no.
Yeah,
I tried to do it to Stack Sats. They said hell no. And so that, I think that goes away when the cost of capital is accurately priced. It's not right now. And so when the state's monopoly over money, gradually and suddenly disappears, I think so does the kind of mirage of an quote unquote education system we're in now, and the bureaucracy that comes with that, right? Like, if you look at what the fuck happened in 1971, WTF happened in 1971 on their website. One of the things that was like, for me, I really was like, wow, was university administrators and university professors since like the 70s, or it was since like the 50s. And the professors, it's basically the same, maybe a little bit more, but the administrators working in the university system since, and no, like, did it happen the day after Nixon removed the gold peg? No. But like, what is this saying? Well, it's saying like, there's something subsidizing this huge mess of an education system we have today. And what is it? Well, it's like the free money, right? It's like every single year. And for me, like, I went through the application process 2 years ago. Like, it was pretty brutal. Like, I applied to 5 schools that I really, really wanted to get into. like kind of reach schools that I would really consider, with UVM, which I knew I would get into, and a bunch of others I knew I would get into. But like, and I had a couple of free vouchers for applications, and usually they're like 50, $100 a pop. And on this Common Core website, you can like, some universities require like different essays or requirements or whatever. But for the most part, like you can apply to 100 schools if you want. Like just click down the line, right? Like it's basically the same thing. And everybody I know applied to like 5 to 10 schools. And so what does that mean? Well, you have universities that have like infinite demand. They every single year, like I guess like
they're turning people away.
They're turning people away. So like they know that they're going to get every single year, that they're, regardless of price. Like some universities during 2021, or like the last year, starting in September 2020, raised their prices for online Zoom over the in-person classes, and people paid.
That's insane.
That's insane. And they paid. Like Harvard, I don't think they raised the prices, but they kept their base tuition at like $55K. And then with, if you didn't live on campus or whatever, but people paid, they got paid $55,000 for Zoom classes, right? And keep in mind, like where we're going. That's a pretty good question. Where are we going? Well, they recorded the same classes for economics, chemistry, mathematics, calculus, whatever the hell you want to learn. They recorded the same classes in 2020 that they taught in 2021, and people paid $55,000 for it, right? So, and they're going to teach the same classes with the same professors in 2022. And so, like,
and they're just going to play the recording.
Yeah, like, and you have that same professor. Like this was like a big kind of red pill that I used for a lot of my what is it called, like college friends or whatever, or people that I talked to in high school. They're like, dude, you dropped out. Like, what do you think? Like, that's kind of risky, isn't it? And I was like, dude, well, tell me how.
Way riskier.
Yeah, I was like, well, all right, well, tell me this. What is the value of something that, right? There's how many college students? I don't know off the top of my head. Millions of college students, thousands of universities or institutions, thousands of professors in those universities or institutions, and tens of thousands of classes, whatever the numbers are. I don't know. Well, you have, how many Calc 101 courses are taught, right? And you have the 1,000 best teachers, or the 1,000 teachers that are teaching these calc classes, and like plot them on a bell curve. Well, where we're going, only the top, 0.1% of these teachers are going to be teaching calculus, because that's all we need. And like, if people might get scared with that, like, oh, what are they going to do with the jobs? Well, I don't know, but they're going to do something else with their time. Maybe they don't have to work at all where we're going, right? Like, this is the price of tomorrow thesis. We're like, everything's going to get exponentially cheaper. And that's a good thing. Like, there's no need to be paying 6 figures, like, never mind dollar amount. There's no need to be paying years of your time for this thing that can be distributed for a penny across the globe. And I'm really bullish on what like Michael Saylor's doing with like Saylor Academy and whatever, right? Like, they're just compiling all this stuff and they're saying, hey, it's free. Like, how do you compete with that? And you can't.
Oh, yeah. Like, I think in like 50 years, Saylor Academy will have just flattened like the legacy education system, because education, I mean, think about Moore's law with like how rapidly much cheaper education will become. And then you have somebody like Saylor doing what he's doing. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I hope so. Right. Like, and honestly, I kind of hope that universities, like in-person colleges or whatever, like I hope definitely I hope they get a lot smaller, and I hope like a lot of the rent seeking and bureaucracy aspects of it go away. But like, I mean, I can't lie, college was a blast. Like I'm at my parents' house for the summer, but like I'm moving back with my college friends in the school year, because like it's an awesome scene. I'll be on my laptop, like, instead of paying for Zoom classes, like getting paid for Zoom, or, writing, or, being on my laptop or whatever. But like, it's an awesome time. And like, that was the toughest thing for me, was like the social scene, which probably 90% of people go for. It's awesome. And like, you do build, like, sometimes for some people, you build lifelong connections, you build lifelong friendships, right? Like the best years of your life. Like, I think that's kind of cringe, but like, it's definitely extremely fun. It's just not worth paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for fun, like, it's just,
I know. It really is. And I mean, I've like college. I always say there's different chunks, like phases of life, and each one of them is like the best years of your life. You know what I mean? Like it'll get that way all the way to the point where like me and my wife are retired, and like doing, basically next to nothing, just keeping ourselves busy and like, hanging out on the beach or something. It's like, oh, these are the best years of our life. But it's important to like enjoy every, chunk of time. And I think, hopefully maybe it'll trend towards like a community type thing where like kind of like what you're doing, like you can be working and like you happen to be in the same place. Because I will tell you, I mean, I took 5 years. I spread out my credits over 5 years because and I don't know if you even look this far into it, but for club hockey, you can do 5 years of eligibility. You didn't even have to sit out a year. So I was like, oh my God, I can play hockey for 5 years instead of 4. I'm going to do that. And I spread it out and, incurred more debt probably because of it. Um, but yeah, I loved college. Like I loved the lifestyle. You know, anytime I drive through campus, I'm like, oh my God, this is like, I miss these days. But like, all the kids in there were like, 9 years old whenever I was in college. But yeah, it's something I wouldn't, I mean, my last day of college, like graduation was on a Saturday and I was with my buddy. Uh, Sorry, Dad, if you hear this, but so the Cathedral of Learning is at Pitt's campus. Anyone want to look that up? Just Google it. But the Cathedral of Learning, I think it's the tallest education building in the world, and it's like over 100 years old or something. Uh, and it basically is like a Hogwarts style building, like really cool nooks and crannies. Like that's what it feels like on the inside, and it's like Gothic style. And we found if you went in at night and you could ride it all the way to the top, and then in the one like women's bathroom on like the 40th floor or whatever, you could prop the window open and go out on like a little balcony and just like be like 40 stories high, like over campus. So we would go up there and like we wouldn't like we were safe, we weren't like horsing around or whatever, but we would just go up there and just like chill and like you know have like deep conversations about life. And my one buddy, everybody else had moved away, and I was like the only one there, and he was still there for work or something. And I saw the sun coming up on graduation day, and he was like,
Awesome.
He was like, "Is it time?" I was like, "Yep, it's time." Like, because
Yeah.
I always tell people, I knew how good I had it in college. Like, there are a lot of people that say, like, "Oh, you don't know how good you had it." Like, I knew the entire time, the whole 5 years. I was like, "Man, life's gonna be different and not as awesome as it is right now," And then
Yep.
that moment comes, it ends, and boom, you're in the real world. But I wanted to get your thoughts on. So I gave a presentation at Pitt. Uh, I did a public speaking course where we could talk about any subject we wanted for the one speech, and we had to do it in front of a large group. So it was a 250 seat auditorium. It wasn't filled, but there was a good number of people in the class, and a lot of professors came in for this like public speaking thing. And I gave my talk on how college is a waste of money. And I wish that, I mean, this is before YouTube was in its infancy. I wish I mean, I had like a handy cam, but like nobody had cell phone recorders. Um, and I've tried digging it up. My school email got, shut down after graduation. So I don't even know where I can find this document. But yeah, I just lambasted the college institution like right to their faces. And
Take some
like
balls.
the looks on their faces were so worth it though. It was like they were just like, how dare you say that about college education? And I was like, I just was like, basically, to sum it up in like layman's terms, I was like, I'm here to play hockey, and like, if I wanted to be successful, I'm going to be successful regardless of whether or not I came here. Like, it's just, I'm just paying a lot of
Pretty
money
solid.
for this. So I thought that's whenever I've heard your story. First time I heard your story, I was like, I think he would understand that and possibly
Totally.
end up giving a story, giving a speech like that. Is that something you could ever see yourself doing?
I mean, yeah, I funny enough, took a public speaking class and I've always hated public speaking. And I've done a lot more of it now.
Ironically, now that you're, going in spaces and all that kind of stuff.
Like did something at Bitcoin 2021, like moderated a panel, which was really fun. But yeah, I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, both like, still in college, haven't gone back, in a room or anything, but talked with professors and whatnot. I've been like, hey man, like, listen, not personal at all, but like, there's just a pretty blatant and explicit opportunity cost here. And like, you shouldn't take it personally, but like, the price of college last year for me was, I don't know, like freaking 1 or 2 Bitcoin or whatever it was. And what is it now? Or like there for 1 year, right? Like then the year before that, it was multiple. And like, and what is it going to be in 10 years? Like less than a million sats or whatever the hell it is. Right. Like, and so,
that house you're going to buy.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, I mean, I think I would have, without Bitcoin, I would have still kind of seen the mirage. But given my path of like, I'm a numbers guy. I like math. Always have. Didn't really love. I took a chem class in high school. Didn't love it. Was like, I don't know if this is for me. So it was like, all right, well, go into math. And like, I think kind of the sad thing about the fiat system maybe is like there is such a lucrative, or like there's such a strong incentive to be like, all right, like in high school, I was like, all right, I'm gonna go to Wall Street. Like I'm gonna, investment banker, and like, God, that sounds miserable now, but I didn't know. Yeah, like I was like, Wolf of Wall Street, so sick, The Big Short. Like I don't know, it just, the some of the brightest minds, because of, and this is going deep down this kind of fiat rabbit hole, but like because of the Triffin dilemma, because of what the dollar and just kind of the financialization of everything has done to our economy, like the brightest minds, some of them go to engineering, yeah, but like many more go to financial engineering, right? Like I'll just go, I'll go to Wall Street and work on Goldman Sachs derivative desk, like
engineer a way for me to be richer.
Yeah. Like, does are financial products good? Yes. Does financial engineering actually produce any value? No.
Yeah.
Like,
no, it doesn't.
So like
a professional poker player provides more value to society.
Yeah, essentially. It's like not negative value.
Yeah, exactly.
But like, yeah, I was just kind of stuck like, okay, well, I'm in business and like, or, studying finance and econ, like what's the path if I stay? And, I probably could have gone, and worked Wall Street or whatever in a few years. And like, probably would have been done all right. But like, and I didn't drop out being like, hey, I'm going to work for a Bitcoin company. I didn't know. I was just like, all right, well, screw it. We'll see. Like,
see what happens.
Like I worked for my dad's electrical business. And like to be honest, like I told him after, I was like, hey, I have a lot more respect for you now, because this sucks. Like, it's brutal. And I was like 19, 20 years old doing it. And I was like, I hate this. Like,
it is brutal work. It is. So I always tell people like they work so much harder than I do. Like, and that sounds bad. Like, because I'll sit there. So let's just like, there's this thing between me and a couple movie producers where we sit there and we are like, we're the least hardest working people on set. Like the jobs everyone else is doing is so hard. Like I couldn't do that. Like, because there's electricians, there's, everything, like, and they're carrying like heavy shit everywhere. And like, we're just sitting there like, oh man, that looks tough. Sorry. Like, but that's specifically, so if anybody feels like I'm a jerk for saying that, I literally, that was my story. I told it on Daniel Prince's podcast, but that's what got me out of doing what I was doing in the movie industry. Cause I saw my producer friend sitting there doing nothing in a heated tent while I was freezing my ass off on my feet all day, like carrying shit everywhere. And I was like, I want to do what that guy does. That looks a lot better. So I asked him, I said, how do I do that? But yeah, so your dad, you worked for his electrical company and you're like, oh my God, like this is how you put a roof over our head. This is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm in like super, super good spot. Like, never grew up like needing food on the plate at night. And like, because of that, I'm super grateful. but like it was kind of eye opening. I was like, damn, like you've been doing this for 30 years. And like, yeah, like, you know, like as the owner of a small business, right? Like there are lower guys like me last year who do like a lot of the dirty work, but still like, you know, like going and getting down on a concrete cold floor in the middle of Vermont winter and like putting in outlets is like super shitty.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and like
not a life of luxury.
No. And like when you know, if you're like, you know, self-employed or whatever, like it pays well. Like, I mean, you know, I think the average age for like a trades worker, at least where I'm from, is like 56, 57 or something. So like there's demand. Like I have a ton of respect for, and I met a couple of them last year, of kids that are like 18 and like reject the status quo and are like, hey, I'm just going to go get my electrical license or like plumber's license. And like I've met a couple of them, like 22-year-olds who are making six figures, you know, and they're plumbers, and all of their like yuppie friends are like, haha, you loser, like you plumber, or like not explicitly like that, but they'll like crack jokes. And I'm like, dude, like this kid
he's so far ahead of you.
$100,000 and has his own business and has a positive net worth, and you are sitting with $175,000 in negative net worth. Like, you know, like what does that say about you, man? Like not that kid.
Yeah. It's crazy. The price of college, what is it now for like, I'll give you like, to contrast what it is now. In the year 2000, my brother went to this private school, the one I mentioned that I went to for a year, and it was like 20 grand to go there. And that was like mind blowing. That was like, oh my God, $20,000 for 4, or no, it was 20 grand a year. Yeah. But like, you know, it was like, oh my God, $80,000 to go to college. That's insane. And by the time I started there 4 years later, it was 24,000. And it was like, what is going on? This is so expensive. Like that would be cheap, right? Nowadays.
Yeah. So I think I just looked it up. The tuition for like public college is 27,000, and then private's 32, but that's just tuition. So then like
yeah, that doesn't cover room and board and everything.
Like, yeah, I was a good student. Like I didn't pay much. I paid like pennies for tuition, but I lived there because I wanted to, you know, live the life. I wanted to like be in school. And this was before like after COVID, you know, remote's more of an option, but like you couldn't like not live on campus, you know, like you had to live in the dorms. And so for me, like 80% of the cost was food, room and board, and like which I didn't account for, the $1,000 of textbooks that I bought that we never opened. They're like, oh, go buy these 5 books. I'm like, all right, go to the library. I'm like, this macro econ textbook that we opened twice for a study guide is $270. Like, are you kidding me? It's robbery. Like it's
insane. You know what I did was a life hack I did was I bought the teacher's edition off of the internet. So you can like have all the answers, and not to like cheat, just to like, I could sit there and be like, I like to look through problems and understand how it was figured out. And then then from there on, it's like, I get it. You know what I mean? Like when they try to teach you like to go through the process, like it's easier for me to watch somebody have a solved equation and look at it and figure out how they did that. And then I can just apply that going forward. So with teachers, it was frustrating. They wouldn't do that. So I just bought the teacher handbook, and it was like, or like the teacher edition. And it was, I mean, like a tenth of the cost. And yeah, because who's going to buy that book? I had a friend too that won free books for a year and this while he was like hammered, and it was at a basketball game for the school, and he sunk a half court shot. Like he just got randomly picked out of the student section, and I'm like, oh my God, his name literally was Tang. Like that's what he went by, was Tang. And we're like, there's no way Tang is going to make the ball anywhere close to the hoop, because he was just, you know, had been drinking enough. And he just gets up there and just hurls the ball and like drains it. And everybody, you know, he was like, running around, everybody. But yeah, I told him, I was like, dude, you actually saved so much money by getting free books like that. That's such a hidden cost in college. And like you said, you never even used them, right?
No, barely. I mean, like the thing is now with like college, like it's on Quizlet, or like, it's on like Chegg or any of these websites. Like they use the same test every year too, so like you're doing this study guide, or like this, chapter 12 through 17 test today, and like you look up blah 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 book chapter 12 17 test, and like the study guide comes up that's like from the book, like, and that goes back to what we were talking earlier. Like there's these walled gardens of information and institutions and all this shit, and like the internet and everything else is going the completely opposite direction. And for some, like, for some reason, they've somehow been able to hold on. They've somehow been able to like keep the mirage going.
Yeah, it's insane. So when did you get into Bitcoin, or when did you first hear about it? Like, did Bitcoin spring your college freedom, or vice versa, or was it kind of all at the same? I mean, for you could have heard about Bitcoin when you were like 13, so I'm sure,
Yeah. I first heard about Bitcoin, or not even Bitcoin, but I first heard about crypto literally at the top of 2017, when my cousin was involved, or I guess I heard a little bit before, but didn't even care to know. And my cousin put a couple $100 into altcoins on this shady exchange in like October, and he put like $300 and bought like Divx and a bunch of hawk garbage, and like I think like 50x'd in like 2 months. Like, and it was just like he had like tens of thousands of dollars of like hot garbage, and like it was like telling everybody in our family, he's like, dude, like I don't even know, but like it's going up like crazy. And I think some of my family bought like hot garbage ICOs with like $100 or something, and like and they were like, oh, what happened? And like, what happened to them? Like not like any meaningful amount of money. And it was like, oh, like it literally went to zero.
Like, so he never cashed out.
No. And I mean, so funny enough, like I think 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, like I figured out like, all right, I'm gonna go finance, gonna go econ, or just business major. I like numbers.
And how old are you at this point?
7. So at the time, the 2017 bubble, I'm 16.
Okay, so yeah, you're getting towards the end of college or high school, figuring out where you're going to go.
Yeah, and I think my junior year in 2018, I'm like, all right, well, let's try to figure this out. And I start reading up on like value investing. I literally like, all right, best investors ever, and it's like Warren Buffett. I'm like, all right, what does Warren Buffett know? And they start reading and start doing more of this stuff and like learning about like stock markets and yada yada. And I think like late 2018, I text my cousin. I'm like, hey, like crypto, what is it? Like, like I know you were really into it earlier. And like had Coin Market Cap, and I was like looking at all this madness and all these, all the green and red all over the screen and all these candles. Like, what is going on here? And he like, gave me a little bit of a rundown, but I just, luckily, like I had a Twitter account that I hadn't used for anything. Like no one uses Twitter for social media, especially my age. And I just use it to follow news or whatever. And I stumbled upon like the maximalist crowd early, like I mean, luckily or not, luck, skill, I don't know. But started to slowly just like lurk, like crypto, Twitter, what is this, Bitcoin? And I start the day I turned 18, like spring of 2019, I had started to really learn about it, and was kind of at the tip of the rabbit hole. And that was like right at the bottom of the bear market. It was like my 18th birthday. I think like 2 weeks later, I made a purchase at 3,000, a couple $100. I was like, nice. All right, like, and then nice. I watch it like in 3 months, 4x. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, I need to learn, like, I need to buy more. And 2, like, what is going on? And at the same time, I'm still like, I'm not orange pilled by any means, but I'm like really interested in the stock market, really interested in the economy and finance and investing. And, I have Robinhood, and I'm like, buying Apple stock because I think I'm savvy. And like, yeah. And I really like, at the same time as I'm figuring out what Bitcoin is, like I'm learning about central banking and Keynesian economics and all of this stuff. Like and that, further went on into school and dived deeper into it all. But like, I was coming from, I didn't have any like knowledge beforehand. I had no background to kind of, or like indoctrination really. It was just like a blank slate. And so it was like, all right, well, Bitcoin, like, Wall Street, Keynesian central banking, like, why does a man go up on stage, Jerome Powell, and say a thing and the market whipsaws either direction? Like, why,
Yeah. What's the
coming
cause
from an
and effect
18-year-old, like, why does the Fed, why does some institution, cutting the cost of capital, why does it like so good or so bad? Like, and obviously those answers, but like, from an 18-year-old that knows nothing, what makes more sense? Like, digital currency that no one controls and software. Okay, it makes sense. Like, you can get into the nuances, which I have over the last year or two, of like how it actually works and what running a node means and all of this little stuff. But like, all right, old white men in suits or software, like, what makes sense? Okay, software, duh. Like, hard cap, duh. Like, all these things, like, it just, and the more and more I learned about it, I was like, all right, like, there's no comparison. There's like why would I ever want this alternative system that so many people are dying to defend, right? Like, this fiat game. And so I continued to I hung out on Twitter a lot during my year at school. And I actually, towards the end of it, kind of January, February, I spent more time on Twitter and listening to podcasts and reading book recommendations from Twitter than I did studying. And COVID came, they sent us home, and they said, because of the stress and yada yada, you can pass or fail any class. And I was like, all right, passed all my classes, didn't pay attention once after I got home. I was like, had like boomers on Zoom talking to me about nonsense. And so like from then on, it was just kind of self-taught. And while I was working, it's basically, it was electrical work / we also have like a maple sugaring operation that we own. And so I would do that and tap trees and whatever. At the same time, like, listen to literally 8 hours of podcasts a day. And so did that until like CK from Bitcoin Magazine hit me up in like January, February, March or something. And was like, hey man, I don't really know what you can do, but you want to join our media team? And I was like, sure. Like, and I started part-time there, and now we're here. So it's been a ride.
Wow. And so I was gonna ask, since you were in Vermont, eventually I was gonna ask about maple syrup. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like, you have to do that, I assume, if you live in Vermont. Like, you just go outside, right? And like, you rip a branch off a tree and it just comes pouring out. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, that's how it works. Yeah, we have like a couple hundred acres near J Peak. And so my dad, he had a deer camp for the longest time. And we didn't do that. And it was, I think, after the 08 recession, we just kind of like pinched, got hit hard. The electrical business, every contractor and all of it canceled. And they're like, all right, well, like, we need to figure something out. That's when he kind of decided, like, hey, well, we're sitting on all these trees and we're doing nothing with it. Like, let's figure it out. And so started doing that, and have gotten a little bit bigger every single year. I think last year I probably did half, or like did a quarter of them, but we have like 12,000 taps.
Wow.
So yeah, it's a pretty solid operation. And I don't know if it's working now, but on our website, I did set up a BTC Pay server to sell some liquid gold for digital gold.
Oh, nice. Well, I'm sure that maple syrup is amazing too. And you literally just, you tap into a maple tree, right? And it like just starts. How much comes out? How quickly? How long does it take?
Yeah, so it basically, like, you tap into a maple tree and it gives you like sugar water. And then, like, depends on the tree, depends on the time and the season, but about 40 gallons of that sugar water boiled down is maple syrup. And so, I mean, there's other, like, you don't just boil it the whole time. It's pretty energy intensive, but you take like, there's like reverse osmosis machines, which remove a ton of the water. And then you boil it down, but essentially you could take this sap out of a tree, and if you boil it down long enough, it's literally just brown maple sugar. So
Wow.
yeah, I think maple syrup is like 65% water, I believe.
But
Yeah.
it's just condensed basically.
Yep.
Wow. Um, well, that's man. So you guys have land up there. I didn't know you could own land in Vermont since it's such a small state.
Yeah, we do. We do
You own
have
like a
some
quarter
land.
of the state. You own like
Yeah,
a.
basically a couple hundred
uh,
acres. Yeah.
so you're living the Citadel life already then.
Yeah, man. I mean, if it gets like, so I live in Burlington, which is a city. People in Burlington call it a city. It's not a city. It's like, I don't know, around the area. It's probably, I think the county I live in has like 200,000 people, and Vermont as a state has like 600,000. So, um, yeah, pretty small. But if it goes to hell here, I mean, I think Burlington's kind of on its path over the next decade to turn into like a mini Portland, unfortunately. I didn't talk about this earlier in the interview, but like there's a lot of communist, not propaganda, but like commie vibes at school, like super
Yeah.
liberal. I'm not even talking about liberal in terms of like you vote Biden. Like, I don't care, man. But like,
Yeah. I
just in
know.
terms of like Green New Deal and we need this, and like people are like, sleeping on the streets in front of street stores, and like, the store owners are like, hey, like, can we get these people to move? And then like we have 1,000 students from our school like sign something to boycott the businesses that were like trying to sign a law that like homeless people can't sleep outside. And like it's just like stuff like that. I'm like, oh gosh, like this is probably going to turn ugly over the next decade. Like, like
Yep.
there's like rent moratoriums and people are like protesting that. There's literally like a subset of people at the school that were like in a park and they were saying like abolish what is it called? Landlords. And I was like, how? Wait, what are you what do you mean abolish? Like, what does that even, like, explain this more than the sign you're holding up?
Yeah.
Like, and there's no reasoning with people like that. It's just like, all right, yeah, abolish them, sure. Like, okay, now what?
I know. And it's like it's almost like social Darwinism. Like,
Yeah.
where hopefully what I'm hoping for is that like these people that like, because you look at them and you go, that makes no sense and it's not going to work. And no matter how much you explain it to them, it won't make sense to them or they won't hear you out. So they're just going to do what they're going to do. So what's going to happen is they're going to all move and just be governed as hard as they can be. They're going to be sitting there like, govern me harder, daddy. Like I want to be governed as hard as possible. I don't want any freedoms. I don't want to make my own choices. I just want to sit here and binge Netflix while you feed me through a tube or something. Like that's where it'll go for them. And then like the rest of us in the world will be like, hey, we're having like a really good time, like, making our own decisions and, like living. And like because I'm in Pennsylvania, so I hate to think of ever leaving Pennsylvania. But I don't know. We're kind of at a tipping point here. Like we're gonna see. Been keeping me up at night. These potential restrictions. And we'll see. We did vote in Pennsylvania in May. They put on the ballot that because before the governor could go his emergency declaration or whatever lasted for 90 days and he could extend it in perpetuity without anyone questioning him. So that's what we were living under. And then in May, we had during one of the elections, they put on the amendment to the Constitution of Pennsylvania that now he can only do it for 21 days. And then in order for him to extend it, he has to get like both houses to agree, and which would never happen. So, so basically, it's down to 21 days. And I hope that's what I'm just curious. Like there's rumors floating out there of like more lockdowns. It's like, all right, Pennsylvania, show me what you got because I'm a free agent. Like we hate to think that way. We really do. Me and my wife haven't even gone that far down that road of like, would we actually leave the state? But we do know one thing for sure is that we are not going to live somewhere that's a terrible place for our kids to grow up. And so yeah, the ball's in Pennsylvania's court. But there's other places out there. Like I've seen some people saying New Hampshire, which is right next to you. Like I never expected New Hampshire to be recommended as a freedom state.
Yeah. I mean, they have their slogan is like live free or die. And I, excuse me. And they have, I think, I don't believe they have income tax, which is awesome.
Nice.
And they have a couple, I think there's like a very like niche libertarian community in New Hampshire. They tried to start like a crypto haven, whatever, a while back. I don't know what, how that's going. But like this area in general is pretty beautiful. Like Vermont, New Hampshire. Vermont is, far more liberal politically. There is definitely income tax. But maybe New Hampshire. I mean, personally, I would I've never lived anywhere else but Vermont, but probably somewhere south this decade. It's kind of trendy, but like I think the US is kind of at a tipping point here where we're having, the states are kind of, because of the federal government's like not lack of control, but because we have state rights, there's kind of a split down the road. And, you're going to have some states go the way of New York and New York City, who literally imposed vaccine passports more or less today. Right. And then you're going to have people or states like Texas and Florida that are like, no, you're free to do what you want. We're not locking down. This is a total joke. Like lock down for what? For this disease and ignore all of their costs, right? And like send people to like through poverty because of a virus that no one really getting sick from. Like what? Like this has been like, if you haven't been somewhat, red pilled, if you want to call it that, over the last year, then like, I don't want to say it, but like, there's not much hope for you, like if you still are like, hey, like, govern me harder, daddy, like kind of a joke, but like, if you still have a lot of trust in government, and their ability to do what's quote unquote best for you, like all of the people, like, so for, one second. So, social media is like a huge thing. And or like Instagram, whatever, for like my age group, Gen Z, right? Like everybody is all over that. And more or less, especially around elections and all that, it turns into political shit, political cesspool. It's just awful.
Disgusting.
I mean, same with everybody with Facebook and, I don't go on Facebook, but it's,
you probably never
like
had a Facebook account because you're that young.
Yeah.
It wasn't cool anymore.
I mean, thankfully. But I mean, we're kind of this native, social media digital generation. Like I don't remember MySpace. Like I do, right? Like we all basically more or less, like my generation grew up with iPhones in high school. That was like kind of the first, more or less, like we were like the first kind of to go through that. And so like everybody's digitally native. And around the elections, it got super ugly for anybody that was a Trump supporter. Like I'm not on there posting about Trump. I'm there posting about Bitcoin. But like, if you weren't like a liberal Biden stan, then like you were like literally like in some cases, and I'm from a liberal state, so it's not like this everywhere, but like you were canceled. You were like, like, oh, that person's racist. Okay, why are they racist? Oh, they don't like Biden. What? Yeah. Well, it's Biden or Trump. Well, yeah, they're the two candidates, but Biden's a bumbling idiot. Oh, but this is the most important election of our life. Like, okay, so make it to January and like there's this quote unquote insurrection again, overthrow democracy because a couple of rednecks wore cowboy hats into Congress and the mall cops that were like ushered them in. Okay.
Yeah.
It was the biggest shit show ever the next day on social media, like in schools. There was like live in Vermont, like there hasn't been a violent crime here like since I don't know when. And there's like protests in the streets and people are like chanting this and that. And then what happened yesterday? I don't even know if it's been passed, but like there's a $1.2 trillion stimulus or infrastructure package with like the biggest corporate loot fest ever, right? Like all these insiders just, basically granting themselves money, like bipartisan, absolute vomit of a bill. No one says anything because like they don't even know. It's like CNN's like, this is good. And they're like, this is good.
They just shake their, oh yeah.
The NPC meme. It's like, it's like, they say it's good. Okay, this is good. And like for me, I feel somewhat like not alienated, but like I just can't do it. Like I can't. I find myself at parties like not not at like parties, but like social gatherings,
Oh yeah.
and people are talking about politics or like they're like, oh, what did Kamala say? And I'm like, you think Kamala Harris matters at
Yeah.
all? Like what like what?
Yeah. Do you think
It's just
these
it's like
people
tough.
actually change your like life? I want to ask you because I know we're getting close to the amount of allotted time we scheduled. Do you have to run, or we could go down this rabbit hole? And I want to get your market prediction, like market discussions as well. But I
Yeah,
don't
I
know.
can
Do you
go up
have?
to like 120. So sorry, I've been going on a tangent, but
No, no, no. That's okay. I just wanted to make sure if you had a hard out that we got because yeah, I mean I agree with you. Like where it's just like like I the veil has been lifted for me completely. It had been a
when
while
was that
ago.
for you?
Um, well, I believed for a while that neither party, they weren't two parties. I believed that it was, we were, they were working on the same side and they were against us, basically, is what I'd come to. Um, and then the, and I'm not like sitting here saying like, oh, there was voter fraud and all that kind of stuff. But the way that it was, the way that everything was handled was alarming through the media. Like with the way that like they just quickly ushered in like, yep, they won, like hurry up and like, it was this like statewide branding that like there was no possible way it was another conclusion. Whenever before they kept saying, oh, Russia, 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 and it's like this is really odd. And then you start to like peel back the layers and you're like, huh, like because I'm not a Trump supporter, but I'm like, this is the first guy that wasn't bought and paid for.
Yeah,
Huh. Okay.
yeah,
And then you're like, oh, he didn't start any wars. Oh, he was against China.
yep.
And like, and then you get to that uncomfortable feeling of like, oh my God. And it's just this sense of disillusionment where you're just like, this isn't what I thought it was. Like it's,
No.
and I posted them. I posted the GIF yesterday. I don't know if you've ever seen Jurassic Park since it came out like 8 years before you were born, but the Jeff Goldblum, whenever the T-Rex is coming out, he's the one that like he was the chaos theory, mathematician, and he was like, yeah, you shouldn't be doing this, creating dinosaurs. This is bad, blah blah blah. And then when the T-Rex like breaks loose, he's just like looking out the windshield and he's like, oh God, I hate always being right. And like that's literally how I felt since March of 2020 was I told my wife, I said, I'm all for 2 weeks to slow the spread, give the hospitals a chance to get ready because we don't know what's going to happen. I said, the problem is, and I mean, I literally said this to her. I said, is that they will never let that power go. I was like, and here we
Yep.
are in effing August of 2021, and they're talking about locking down whenever I know of a handful of people who have gotten the virus. And don't get me wrong, it's a real virus that people can get and get sick from.
Yeah. Yeah. My
But
parents got it.
yeah, but and I've only heard of somebody that passed away secondhand. But they were also somebody that was like in their 70s and had diabetes. Um, so it's just like I saw this statistic the other day that said that the average age of or like the survival or the death rate is like 0.03%, and the average age of death is 81.
Older than the
The
average life
average,
expectancy.
yeah, so you
Yeah.
probably saw the same thing. It's like the average life expectancy is 78. It's like, so you mean to tell me that I have a chance of living longer if I get COVID? Like, I mean, not that that's what that means. It's just, so yeah,
Yeah.
so like all those things, because it's not, and I say all these things and it's probably going to get a bunch of 3-letter organizations that are going to like follow me now and stuff like that, want to track me down. But it's not, it's not, I've learned over the years, it's not one way or the other. It's not going to be complete totalitarian lockdown, but it's not going to be the like, pure free. It's going to be somewhere in the middle. It's always somewhere in the middle. So like, you know, with the election fraud, where it's like it wasn't. Was it completely flat out stolen and our votes don't mean anything? No. But was it completely clean? No. Like it's somewhere in the middle. Um, but things like, and then you read like the Gladstein articles and you realize like, oh shit, um, George Bush was bought and paid for, you know. Like I have a buddy of mine, he was like, he's like, you can't tell me that over like other than Obama, over a like 30-year period, the only people qualified for president were a husband and a wife and a father and son. Like what are like that's a joke. Since 1988 to 2016, like it's either Hillary or Bill or George W. It's like that's a joke.
Yep.
And so whenever you start to piece all these things together, and I'm just at this point now where like I don't know if you feel this way, but like I like have fully understood. I've spent the last year and a half trying to peel back all the layers, find truth, and keep digging and digging. And it feels uncomfortable at times. I mean, I don't know if you're a Christian or anything, but like I mean, I'm a Catholic, and Jesus says something about like if you seek for truth, you might not like what you find on the way there. Like, and it's uncomfortable. But then when you get to a level of peace with it, where you're like, it's freeing on the other end, where you're like, wait a minute, these people don't control my life. Like I don't I mean, like I'm not going to attack anybody. I'm not going to do anything bad. I'm just going to live my life. Like if I want to get a plot of land and just live, I can do that and I'm fine.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what politicians say or what they do. So yeah, I've kind of escaped that. I don't know if that's where you're at now or.
Yeah, it was 2020 was like a bit like I was stumbling down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, but I wasn't red pilled. Like, there's like orange pilled is like, becoming kind of a Bitcoiner. Red pilled is kind of like, taking the veil off and looking at the like political establishment and all these things that like you kind of, are like normal, accepted, like, like vote, your vote matters, like all this stuff. That was for me kind of what happened last year. Like COVID came around. I was like lurking on Twitter and like seeing all this crazy, which I now think is probably a psyop, happen in China, where like people are dropping dead. People are dropping dead, and like they're welding doors closed in February, and like, I'm kind of thinking of it from like a financial markets lens. So I'm like, holy shit, like China's a 1 billion person nation, and they just locked down, and like the Nasdaq's at all-time highs. Like what is happening?
This is backwards.
And then it just didn't make sense. And so like, I made a good amount of money, like, buying puts or shorting it or whatever. But like that's kind of irrelevant. It was just like, wait, so nobody cares about COVID. And so for me, just kind of my natural, like, maybe I'm somewhat of a contrarian, but for me, I was like, I didn't end up ordering them, but I was looking at masks on Amazon in February. I was like, oh God, This is bad. And then it was like, all right, March comes, April comes. And then we get some data back, and it was like, all right, so, I mean, even if the CDC is lying or not, like, it's not that bad, like at 20 years old, like I'm healthy, I'm athletic. I don't, I don't face any worries.
Yeah.
Like,
there's no fear for you.
I lived with my parents when they both had COVID, and like, I didn't, give them a hug, but like, whatever, if I get it, like, okay, so be it. And then as the months dragged on, it was like, oh my God, like this is just, it's like the worst pandemic of our time and blah, blah. And it was like, no, it's not. It's literally not. And I see people wearing masks, like in Vermont still, and not as much, but like people wearing masks sitting in a park alone. And I was just like,
I've seen people driving their car by themselves wearing a mask.
Like and just kind of seeing how people were toyed with during the election and all this stuff. Like, I'm so glad I woke up. I was like, all right, these guys don't matter. And like, they're playing for the same team. And ultimately, like, the people calling the shots are the people that you and I probably don't know what their names are. I mean, maybe we do some of them, but like that, I read like The Creature from Jekyll Island, and I was like, holy shit. I was like, central banks, like, and maybe some of it's conspiracy theory, but it was like basically like these globalist organizations through influence and political, like, connectedness, control the world. And people would be like, no, that's such a conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
It's like, no, it's not. It's 100% not. And like waking up to that and then realizing like, okay, so I was getting this Bitcoin thing, but now I got it. Like this, like for me, I'm 20 years old. I'm going to bet everything and more on Bitcoin, because if it fails, like if Bitcoin doesn't work out, and I think that there's a high probability it does, but if it doesn't, then like, for better or worse, I'm fucked anyway. So like, like not just me, but everybody. Like if
Oh,
this like, symbol of freedom and just liberty in the digital age, like if this doesn't work, well, then, we're screwed anyway. So I'm going to go all in. I'm going to go all in socially, economically, like everything. I'm just like all the chips in the middle, because I want freedom, and there isn't really another way to kind of express that. Like I was telling people, I wore my shirt on November 3rd when everyone's voting and like, oh, did you vote? Did you vote? What do you think? And I told them like, I'm not voting, but I bought more Bitcoin today, and I wore my shirt like conservative, libertarian, liberal, like all crossed out, and it was like Bitcoiner. They're like, what is it? Like, what? Why are you even wearing that? Like, what does that even mean? And I was like, it's our only hope for change. And like, that's obviously not a 5-minute convo, but like,
I know.
People would look at me like I had 3 heads.
Yeah, it's really hard for people to like accept that, because it is, like whenever somebody goes like, oh, why Bitcoin? And I'm like, well, do you want me to really get into it? Because it's going to take about an hour and a half. And I'm just going to scratch the surface. But like I had a conversation. I can't remember if I said this on the podcast before, but I had a conversation with somebody that she, was she hadn't seen, she was this lady that knew my parents, hadn't seen me since I was like 4. And to just in the short conversation, she's talking about stocks and everything. And she's like, you into stocks? And I was like, oh, Bitcoin. And she was like, and I was like,
Yeah,
just sitting there
okay.
like, okay. And so I'm like, she just kept going like, well, how much? And I was like, I mean, literally everything. I was like, she was like, I was
Over 100% of my net worth.
yeah. I was like, 401k, everything is cashed out. I was like, it's not even a bet in my mind. It is a certainty that it is going to continue to consume and absorb, so that, I mean, you don't put more money in than you can afford to lose. And like, if you need rent, like you have to have a fiat life where you pay for your mortgage, you pay for everything, like that exists. So I'm not saying like, take that, don't pay for stuff, but I was like, yeah, all the money that I'm not going to touch for like 30 years. I was like, I'm 35. So if I want to retire when I'm 60, I was like, is Bitcoin going to be more or less valuable in 25 years? Like, not even close. Not even close. So, but she was just like, she like asked, like she wanted the details, and basically got to the point of like, she was like, so like everything is like a farce economically. And I was like, basically, like, I hate to break it to you, but that's how it is. Well, do you have time to do a little bit of market stuff?
Yeah, dude, let's do it.
So market wise, what are we looking at? Because right now I haven't checked the number in a couple hours, so God knows, what are we at right now? Do you have it up?
I think we're at 38.2.
Okay. We were up to 42 over the weekend. And I usually do these releases once a week, but I'll probably put this out as soon as possible, just because I'm sure people want a market outlook. So what do you see going on right now? We had the big, you and Will are like the whiz kids for on-chain analytics and understanding everything. So tell me what you see going on.
Yeah, I mean, the past couple of months have been kind of boring price action wise. But basically, like the trend since 2020 has been like, to put it simply, like massive amount of accumulation. Like it just like you can kind of see, and some of it's like Glassnode like doing some heuristics or clustering, but for the most part, what you see is just like a massive amount of coins, like hundreds of thousands of them being put away just by strong hands. So like, and they classify this as like liquid or illiquid supply. Where you have basically, it's like 14 million Bitcoin. And some of these are changing, obviously, but like 14 million Bitcoin and basically only going up over time are considered illiquid. So like they haven't moved in like 155 days. and they use this 155-day threshold because statistically, it's kind of interesting. Like the Bitcoin UTXO set, there's like this probability curve of like if these coins are spent again, and after if the coins moved, it's like very, very, very likely that the next hour it's moved again. But as the next hour goes by, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day, there's a less and less likely chance that they are moved or spent. And so at 155 days, the probability that, and I don't know off the top of my head, but the probability that these coins are moved again in the future is very, it's like not as likely. So they classify illiquid and liquid supply using this. And so basically we see like this massive amount of coins becoming illiquid over time throughout 2020. And there was a little bit of a reversal in March of 2020. But for the most part, that market crashed from like 8 to 3.8 or 4K or whatever it was on different exchanges. That was like all derivatives, right? Like you had the legacy system blow up, and that Sunday before, I think it was like March 12th, maybe March 13th, that Sunday, but like that Monday, the legacy system opened up, limit down, and like the bond market, the treasury market, like caught no bid on one of these contracts. But like Bitcoin that Sunday before sniffed it out and like just got absolutely nuked. It was like 50%. Some of that was like coins moving, but for the most part, that was derivatives. And for the next, what
is a derivative for those that are maybe too stupid to know?
Yeah, so derivative comes from the word derived. So essentially, it's a bet on a certain outcome. So Bitcoin's 38,200 right now. I can say, hey, I think Bitcoin's going to be 70,000 next January. And you say, well, I don't, or you thinking that 70,000 isn't going to happen. We can, for January of 2022, we can sell a contract on where the Bitcoin price is going to be. So you can say, I don't think it's going to be there. I'm going to sell you Bitcoin at 70,000 next January, and I can buy that contract. So that's just one example of a derivative.
And you get it like futures at a premium, like you get a, basically at the price it is now, or
so like meaning it's essentially derivatives are just like a bet on an outcome of another thing. So
okay,
so we're talking.
So it has nothing.
Bitcoin
You're not owning Bitcoin at that time. You're just betting on the price of Bitcoin.
Well, so with a futures contract, never mind Bitcoin. Say it's like oil, right? So futures contracts are good because they make a market between buyers and sellers into the future. So if you're a producer of anything, a lot of things like your revenue, your profitability, your expenses can be pretty variable. So futures are good because I can, as an oil producer, I can sell a barrel of oil now in March of 2024, and I can sell it at a price, and I can lock in that revenue. And so futures are good because I can promise like oil is, I don't even know off the top of my head, like $60 right now. And I can be like, hey, in 2024, I'll sell you a barrel of oil. I will deliver it to you for $80. And so you can buy that. So you're buying the barrel of oil and I'm selling it. So Bitcoin works the same, where there is now pretty developed and liquid and growing futures curve for Bitcoin. And so that is what's considered a derivatives market. And there's all sorts of different types. There's ones there's a perpetual contract, which is basically using, there's leverage. You can use Bitcoin as collateral or stable coins as collateral, or some exchanges you can use any sort of crypto. You can long Bitcoin with Dogecoin as collateral with leverage. Like there's all sorts of these different things, but derivatives are just, it's essentially using the Bitcoin spot price. And the Bitcoin spot price is like, there's a market demand for me to trade $1 and for you to trade a Bitcoin. And whatever that is, right now it's 38.2. Whatever that is from 100 or whatever exchanges throughout the world is what it's going to be. Derivatives are just bets layered on top of that, and a lot of them have the promise to deliver Bitcoin, but derivatives like over the short term move price a lot. Like last July 25th on Sunday, we pumped from like 34 to 40K. It wasn't that we had 5 Michael Saylors come in on Sunday and press the big green red button or the big green button. It wasn't like that. It wasn't there wasn't just a massive influx of buying there. What happened was over the course of a month or two, there was a lot of shorting Bitcoin, and they were doing it via derivatives. So they were going in and they were taking sometimes stable coins, sometimes Bitcoin, but for the most part they were using like Tether, and they were going in on these futures contracts, and they were using Tether as collateral, and they were leverage shorting Bitcoin. So they were going in and they were short selling Bitcoin that they didn't actually have. And so what we saw was on Sunday was this kind of relentless accumulation that had been happening. And I can link to you a thread that I put out on this, but because you have basically every single day, regardless of the price, you have this like Bitcoin DCA army. And obviously, like, you know, mine or your $50 or $100 or $1,000 or whatever it is isn't going to move the price, but you have that at a global scale with a bunch of people. And as now you have institutional buyers coming in that may or may not be dollar cost averaging positions. And it eventually adds up. So this trend that happened from 2020 has basically went uninterrupted until April or May. And we saw like a pretty big kind of reversal where we saw like 100, 200,000 Bitcoin that were liquid or that were illiquid, they were in strong hands. They kind of hit the market, and, you know, that not necessarily exchanges, but they changed hands. There was, you know, and there was from when we went from 64 to 30, there was a pretty big reversal in supply against the demand that couldn't keep up. So we kind of trended around this 30 level for a while at the same time where the reversal of, or where the, you know, trend of accumulation reversed again in favor of the bulls, in favor of Bitcoin being taken off the market. But the market didn't react. And you saw a bunch of these kind of traders come in shorting it. And they were just, you know, and it worked out for them for a while. We went from 40 and I kind of thought that 40K level after he pulled back was where we were going to stop. I was like, all right, bull market, you know, we're 30% off the highs. This is, you know, this is probably end. Yeah. And then we right. I was wrong. And, you know, luckily, like I trade with a little bit, but like for the most part, I'm just holding in cold storage. Like I'm not leveraging my stack on a move over a 1 month or 3 month period. I don't care. Like this is a 10-year thing for me. But we went to 30,000. And since then there's just been kind of this relentless accumulation again. And while, you know, all of these derivatives traders, which they can suppress price, but it's essentially like trying to hold a beach ball underwater. It's like essentially like you're just fighting gravity. And or like, you know, it's like a rubber band, and eventually the band snaps. And what actually drives Bitcoin price is demand to hold the asset, and that has to be exchanged with real fiat dollars. Like if the Fed wanted to come in and short Bitcoin to zero, well, they could come in with $1 trillion and borrow a bunch of Bitcoin and short sell it. But the thing is, they have to come back and cover. They have to come back and actually buy the Bitcoin back to exit the position. And so, you know, anyone that's shorting Bitcoin over a large period of time, you're essentially you sell the thing to people that are buying it every day at you know, any price. And so
shorting it basically is you just delaying the inevitable a little bit.
Kind of. Yeah. I mean, and it can be done in various ways where like, you know, like, so for these derivatives contracts, like especially on Binance, we saw like billions of dollars of short selling with stablecoin margin. So like I can long Bitcoin with stable coins or Bitcoin as collateral, but doing it with Bitcoin, like longing Bitcoin with Bitcoin, is kind of disadvantageous if you see a pullback, because your position is losing value at the same time as your collateral is also losing value. So like there's you know, it says your liquidation price is 30K, but as the price goes down, your liquidation price goes up as your collateral is less and less valuable. It's kind of the same dynamic with short selling Bitcoin if you're using stable coins as your collateral, because you're entering this contract and you can use 1x leverage or you can use 50x leverage, meaning if the price goes up or down 2%, if it goes up 2% in the way that you want, you double your money. If the price goes down 2% when you're 50x levered, you're wiped out. And so, and you know, that big money's not doing that, but you know, there's this kind of dynamic where like the price got that in May 19th, when the price nuked real hard, what you saw was a bunch of people throughout the bull market were longing their crypto, or in this case, Bitcoin with Bitcoin. they were super bullish. Well, they kept longing every dip, like we talked about with that 40K level. And eventually the dip wasn't a dip and it kept going. And all these people basically got wiped out because they were using Bitcoin as collateral to margin long the Bitcoin. Well, we kind of just saw the opposite last Sunday, where you had a bunch of people that were shorting Bitcoin with dollars. And so as the price of Bitcoin went up, their collateral that they were using to eventually cover, meaning when you short sell, you borrow, you sell the thing to eventually buy it back. If it goes down further than you sold it at, you buy it back and you pocket the change. That's a short sell. And with a short, the max you can make is 100%. It goes to zero.
Yeah.
Well, the price kept going up. And the thing that they have to cover with Bitcoin, they have to buy it back, is becoming more and more valuable relative to their collateral. And
so they have to keep posting more collateral or they get liquidated.
Yes. And what we saw was yet more and more shorts pile in with more and more, basically with Tether. And eventually, and that was from the 30K level. There was a massive amount of open interest on Binance, meaning like the total amount of future and derivatives kept increasing for like the whole month of June and July. It was honestly kind of crazy to look at. And all of that, or a very large part of that, was just Tether. It was all cash margined. And when you looked at Binance and like the perpetual swaps, that futures contract, you saw that funding was very, very, very negative, meaning that you can enter a long contract, you can be bullish and enter a derivatives contract, and shorts pay you to enter it. Funding basically is a mechanism to keep the order book balanced. So if there's too many longs that all wanted long derivatives, then you're gonna get paid to open short positions. And so funding was severely negative at 30K. So you would literally get paid to open up a Binance account and margin long Bitcoin. And so, that's advantageous for the most bullish asset in history. And so this is kind of the dynamic where the beach ball is being held under the water. You have a bunch of people that are shorting Bitcoin synthetically, kind of with leverage, and as spot buying is just hoovering up coins. And so eventually the price trended up, and they all tried to exit the burning movie theater at the same time, and it didn't happen. It can't work, and that's why it just we saw.
So not everybody can post more collateral all at the same time or whatever to get out or sell.
Essentially, like someone got liquidated, or someone completely exited their position, and at that point, the order, like there's no ask. Like everybody was trying to sell or exit their position at the same time. Like the Binance perp contract where everyone was shorting, the market went up to 40K, and that contract went up to 48K because there was just so many people wiped out at once. So
that wicked up really high.
We're kind of in a similar place where I think that there's not maybe we trend back to 30. I don't think so, but we're not in a position where we're gonna see some leverage blow up. We're pretty healthy spot, and we're just still seeing this kind of under the surface, regardless of price. We're seeing this massive accumulation on chain and people were given, like, especially Will, my buddy. We talk a lot over the phone. He was getting a lot of hate because he was like, guys, this is bullish as hell. And the price was like doing nothing or going down. And people were like, what do you mean, man? And he's like, dude, the data is here, like supply and demand, it's going to snap. And like, it was true. And so we're kind of seeing that same thing. We're like, do I know where the price is going next week? No. Next month even? No. But like, if this continues, which I suspect it will, kind of on the backs of continued money printing and this kind of great monetary experiment we're in, we're literally in like the craziest monetary experiment ever. And so the insurance policy on the whole thing is Bitcoin, and more people are starting to realize that. And so, long term, there's only really one way to be, and that's bullish.
Okay, so we're still in a bull market, and all the trend. I mean, like you said, you don't know where it goes, but do you think we retest, go down to 30 again, or do you think we have something that makes it explode up to 50? Or what would it take, I guess, to explode up to 50 and or lose resistance?
Yeah, I think there's a chance here, at 38, I don't know. But that we see, there was big buyers for sure. And so a lot of these, like whether it's funds or, public companies, which maybe I doubt, but there are going to be some sort of announcements at some point. And whether, like there was big buying at 28, 29, 30. And like there was a ton of volume spot exchanges, especially like Coinbase and stuff. So these big money managers that, kind of got the thesis in 2021, like we've been pushing it home. Digital gold, it's this hedge, it's, QE, all this stuff. You need some Bitcoin. Well, they don't like big money that, like $100 billion hedge funds don't like buying an asset that's getting bid to all hell in their face, like they don't, like Ray Dalio doesn't want to buy Bitcoin at 64K. And so especially when any buy that would be meaningful for them moves the market. And so, I think the catalyst is one, an ETF would be huge. And that's probably, unfortunately, going to have to wait till 2022. But until then, probably an institutional announcement would be pretty big, to kind of some other catalyst, like similar to like Tesla when they announced there was this huge candle. I think we might see something similar where these guys that acquired 28, 30, 35, if we get to 45, they're going to announce, they don't want to announce they bought at 38 when the price is 38 or 37 or whatever, right? Not everybody's Michael Saylor, unfortunately.
And just announces it ahead of time. And
we just bought, guys, like we're all open. We're transparent as hell. But yeah, I think that's the next catalyst. Besides, I mean, I do think we see all-time highs in 2021. I mean, people might not think so, but I'm pretty optimistic there.
Okay. All right. So you heard it here first from Dylan LeClair. It is going to 100K by tomorrow. No, I'm kidding. Awesome. Well, hey, Dylan, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, man. 100%. Appreciate you having me on. It was fun.